Jason David Landry was a 21-year-old from San Marcos, Texas. He was a college student who excelled at music. On the night of December 13th, 2020, Jason was on his way to his parents' house when for some reason he ended up on the wrong road, and soon Jason wrecked his car. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. What are we? We people who are trying to solve disappearances. We're lookers. We're looking for people. We're looking for information. We're looking for that crack in that mystery wall, which seems to stretch to infinity in every direction. And sometimes we're successful. In fact, in the last 6 weeks, 4 of Unfound's disappearances have been resolved to one degree or another. Brandon Roberts, alive. Daniel Villarreal, found deceased, no evidence of foul play. Matthew Braswell, found deceased, no evidence of foul play. Kayleen Oling, found deceased, and surely there was foul play. Yet many families and the rest of us are still looking to solve all of the other disappearances out there. And that's a tough job, knowing that new cases are happening every day. The more we shovel, the more dirt falls in on us. Well, with Jason Landry, you would be hard-pressed to find a family that has looked as hard as they have in such a short time of 2 years. And they want everyone to know the search isn't over. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linus' website, charleyproject.org. Jason Landry came from a great family. He had a brother and a sister. And Jason's father and mother met, then they met again. Jason loved and excelled at music, and he was into video games like most people his age. His schoolwork, well, Jason was prone to eking decent grades out at the last second. However, once college came around, and especially once Jason started attending Texas State, his education became the premier focus in his life. However, everyone around Jason noticed how much he struggled during COVID, his extrovertedness being muted by self-isolation and masks. So on the night of December 13th, 2020, Jason decided to go see his parents outside of Houston. He was at school in San Marcos, and the drive would be about 2.5 hours. When Jason reached Luling, a town so small that if he blinked he would have missed it, Jason seemingly did not make the correct turn. Soon Jason was on a gravel road, and shortly after that, for reasons unknown, his car slammed sideways into a fence. An hour later, a local drove by, saw the car without anyone in it, and called police. In addition, Jason's belongings were in the middle of the road as if dropped there. He was never seen again. Multiple searches both at the time and later yielded no signs of Jason or anything connected to him. Like Bo Man from a month ago, Jason Landry is a young man whose disappearance I first covered on the YouTube monthly series Unfound Now. Since then, and just like Bo's, Jason's case has become a national news story. Please remember that as you try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, does Jason's disappearance really start at the strange conversation he had with a friend on FaceTime right before Jason left that night? Number 2, Did Jason's belongings really sit in the middle of the road for an hour before anyone noticed them? And number 3, if Jason had an injury so bad that he didn't take his phone as he walked off, he couldn't have gone far, right? Jason's family is open to different theories, but they realize those theories are small in number. The guest for this episode is Jason's father, Kent Landry. Unfound news. As was mentioned in the intro, Kayleen Olling's remains were found just off of Washington Boulevard in Pittsburgh last week. I interviewed her father back in 2021. Now more than ever, the belief is that a man in Kayleen's life murdered her. Next, did you catch my appearance on Dr. Telesco's show yesterday? I hope you did. It was, of course, fantastic. We discussed the resolution to the disappearance of Karen Moore, who was found in her car in a retention pond only a mile from Dr. Telesco's office at Nova Southeastern University. Finally, I've started a new monthly series on Patreon and for members of the YouTube channel. It's called Found. I analyze solved cases from disappearance to discovery and everything in between. I think you will find it informative and enjoyable. The first episode, Brandon Lawson. Sign up at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast or hit the join button on Unfound's YouTube channel. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the father of Jason Landry, Kent Landry. Kent, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We were just talking a little bit about family before we started this interview. So let's start there, as we usually do when we have family members on Unfound. Let's just talk about your family. How many children do you have? Where are you all from? If you always lived in that area, let's just start here, get to know the Landry family a little bit.
Sure. Let's see. I'm originally from South Louisiana. And my wife is, her family's originally from Pennsylvania, moved around a lot. We both actually ended up moving to a suburb north of Houston called Kingwood. And both of us were in 6th grade, even though I'm a year older than she is. So I moved, I think it was 77. She moved 78. My dad is oil and gas. Her dad works for DuPont. So that's kind of petrochemical industry overall. You end up in Houston sooner or later. We actually both went to the same high school, Kingwood High School, graduated a year apart. We knew of each other. We had mutual friends, but we didn't run in the same group. It was a large high school. I was in debate and she was in band. We actually saw each other some through mutual friends. First couple of years in college, I went to Baylor on a scholarship for the first couple of years, which is Southern Baptist. And then I ended up transferring to Texas A&M, which is where she was. And that's where we met. First day of my junior year of A&M, first day of her sophomore year. My best friend, who was my groomsman, introduced us and we started dating. May will be 33 years. So
wow, it was meant to be, Kent.
Yeah, it's funny when you look back at your life. I really think God was laughing and enjoying putting us together, but it wasn't time. I mean, we literally went to some of the same parties. I knew all the same people. She had terrible taste in men before she met me, but yeah, it was the right time for us. We dated and we never looked back. And so my first degree was in economics, worked for a couple of years and went to law school. My wife's a CPA and has been a CPA her entire career. I'm licensed in Texas, where I started. I went to law school here in Houston, clerked for a year, and then also was licensed in South Carolina. And the reason for that was her dad had been living in South Carolina right across the river from Augusta, Georgia, a town called Aiken. Lovely town.
Yeah.
And since we had lived in Houston for so long, such a large city, we'd go visit in South Carolina, and Aiken's about 30,000 people or so. And it was just such a different style of life. It was much more laid back. It was just, and we really were, and we decided, let's see. So I looked for jobs in both, found a job in that town. We lived about a mile or so from my in-laws. Jessica was born here in Houston right as I was graduating from law school.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to South Carolina. Both the boys were born in South Carolina. So Jessica's the oldest, and Kyle, and then Jason's our baby. And they were born in South Carolina when I was practicing law. We lived there for, well, let's see. The boys were little. I mean, Jason was barely out of diapers when I was called to seminary, which is a totally different story.
Wow.
So we decided to make the big change and go to seminary, and I became a pastor. I went to seminary in Austin, which was great. We have family in Austin also. All of my wife's sisters live there. And so my first call was in Mississippi for about 5-6 years. Amazing people in Mississippi. And then my second call is where I still am. I've been here for the last 13 years or so.
Wow.
When we moved here, let's see, Jason was only in 3rd grade when we moved here, and Kyle was 5th, and Jessica was a freshman in high school. So this has kind of been, if you ask them where home would be, it would be here.
You're here. Okay. And so you're a pastor now.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the name of your church, and where is it?
It's in Missouri City, which is a suburb southwest side of town, Missouri City, Sugar Land area. It's called Southminster Presbyterian Church.
Okay. All right. Everybody wants to go to church in that area.
Yeah, maybe in person.
Check Kent's church out. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have 3 kids. The oldest is a girl, a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and you have 2 sons. And what are the ranges in age again, from oldest to youngest, from her to then Jason, the youngest?
Well, let's see. Jessica is my oldest. So when she would be a senior in college, Kyle was a freshman. So they're 4 years apart. And then Jason's 2 years after.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. And so you're all there, and you've been in Texas then for a while. So you went to Texas, to South Carolina, to Mississippi, then back to Texas.
Yep,
Okay.
Texas is home.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, let's just, of course, we're talking today, of course, about Jason. So let's talk about him. His interests, his hobbies, personality, some memories of Jason. Going back as far as you want to go. What strikes you about your son, Jason?
It's funny. As a parent, you raise your kids in the same house, they eat the same food, discipline the same way, go to the same schools, but they turn out to be so different. And my wife is very type A, and I guess I'm type A too, but I'm also ADD. And so it's funny to see how your kids get different attributes of you and then develop into their own person. So for both Jessica and Kyle, they're both very much self-starters, self-directed. They always kind of knew what they wanted to do. They just plowed through school, even though they didn't enjoy different aspects, and they had plans, and they're living those plans now still to this day. Jason, on the other hand, just always, it was a plan a week. And the ADD in me appreciates that of him. We never make a plan, we procrastinate, but did he procrastinate? But he always had, he is one of the most optimistic people I've ever met. He always, if you told him, and we've told him from time to time, like, you only have a 5% success rate at this point, it's like, hey, like, we'd be looking at his college work or school or something like that, and he wouldn't be doing his work all school year. And he's like, yeah, but if I get 100 on the exam, I'll end up with a B. Yeah. And I'm like, what makes you think you're going to get 100 when you haven't gotten over a 75 the entire class? He's like, no worries. I'll study. I'll knock it out. It'll be fine. And he believes it every time. all the time. And so it was always, and I think that's one of the aspects of kind of, he's also very extroverted. The other kids are more of a mix, and Lisa and I are more of a mix. Lisa's much more introverted than me, but Jason is very extroverted. And when you're extroverted, you get energy and you need people around you.
Yeah.
And that's part of the particular. And so has always been social, social in a good way. Always made friends easily, always enjoyed the company of people, had a very broad group of friends, even throughout. He's one of those people that you'll want to be friends with because he's a good friend. You know, he's there for you.
Yeah, loyal.
And so and he was also incredibly, like I said, optimistic, and like going to Texas State, he was so excited for the new challenge because for the first time he really, for college, he really kind of his first year he went to Sam Houston. He had a good time. He had a lovely girlfriend, and he spent all this time with her and having a good time. And you know, I am no one to say your freshman year of college, you just, you know, you're away from mom and dad, you enjoy yourself. He's not the first to come home from his first year of college. And so he did junior college his second year. Okay. And he really worked hard I think for the first time, he really wanted, because he started to hear and started to get a better sense of kind of where he was interested in. And so to get into this sound engineering program at Texas State, which is one of the top ones in the country, okay, you had to get in the music program, you had to get into school. And so he had to make a 3.0 at junior college and all that. And he did. He worked real hard and we were so proud of him. And he was so proud because to achieve something, sure, it makes all the difference.
Right.
And so he went off to Texas State and he's one of the bravest people I know because, I mean, like for me, my freshman year of college, my roommate was a guy I've known since elementary school. You know, so he went literal, you know, potluck, an apartment complex. He just matched up with whoever was there. Ended up not being a good match, but that takes a lot of courage to go to a completely new college. Midstream because you're not a freshman anymore, so you don't have all that kind of freshman bonding stuff, and to just kind of live into it. And I still remember dropping him off at his apartment that day, and one of the neat things was Jack, who you probably heard in the story, lived in the next apartment over, was also a friend from band in high school. And because in fact, we were driving up there and Lisa asked him, she's like, who do you know at Texas State? And I think he named I think 3 people, and Jack was one of them. And to have him live next door was
great.
You know, it was really a God thing. It really did, was great. That gave all of us a lot of comfort.
So he was into music. What did Jason play, or did he take lessons? What I think people would be interested to know about that.
He played in high school. He played all the low brass, so he played multiple. He whatever they needed, he played. So he played trombone, bass trombone, euphonium, all of those low brass instruments. Not tuba. He didn't play tuba, but basically everything above tuba, trombone. And he played all that. And he played in regular band, marching band, and jazz band. And for the program, one of the things he was working on that year is you had to actually put out a musical portfolio. So he was teaching himself piano and guitar. So he could be able to get into the music school, you've got to play music. So, you know, he had done some pieces on trombone, but trombone's not exactly, you know, it's not a solo instrument, you know.
That's true.
So he was, teaching himself guitar in particular, and also some keyboards, so he could be able to do that. So
my mother, who is deceased now, but she was a music major. Graduated from Duquesne. Being from Western Pennsylvania, she went to Duquesne University with a music degree. And then she taught me the piano, so I've played the piano since like I was like 5 years old. So when I hear we're going to talk about a missing person who was into music or was a
Yeah.
musician, I have to ask about it, and
Yeah.
so that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
funny. My wife's the musician. She's played piano since she was a little girl,
Mhm.
and I can't carry a tune in a bucket. Neither can Jessica, neither can Kyle. But so he followed his mom's footsteps into music, and always had a love for it, and always did. In fact, I think it was before, like his senior year in high school, you can actually do a career aptitude test that does it's like a 3-day test. You go in and they do all these, everything from dexterity to everything, and then they give you all these results about things that you would be good at. And the one that was off the charts for him is he had perfect pitch recognition, which is actually what started this whole idea into sound engineering, which is actually very rare to be able to accurately hear
Yeah,
pitch.
I know it. As a
And
musician myself, I know it. Yeah.
so that was actually, I think, what started this whole genesis is because it tells you, okay, with this skill, here's the careers you can make out of it, and a sound engineer type of career is one of those things, because it's kind of an unusual little nuanced thing. And so I think that's what actually started him to, because I know after his freshman year and into his sophomore year, he was really kind of like, what is it I want to do? And we said, why don't you pull that? Because he didn't want to do it way back when in high school. We made him do it. I'm like, why don't you pick that up, look at it again, and maybe see now if something pops for you? And, it's one of those things where as a parent, you can make a suggestion and then you have to let it grow on itself, so it bears fruit. And I think that's actually what happened. Was he kind of, he'd always loved music, and this was, I think, something that he was very, very excited about, is that program. And of course, that's one of the aspects of it is, it's really hard for all of us. If you've ever gone like in with great expectations and then to have them shut down, like you really are looking forward to this great first date, and she won't call you back.
Story of my life, Kent. Story of my life.
And I think that's kind of part of the whole aspect is depends on who you are. It takes you a while to get to pick yourself back up after getting punched in the mouth, so to speak.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that when he went to this other school, he had a girlfriend. Is this a girlfriend that continued over to Texas State, or did they break up? What was the status of them? What happened there?
Well, no, they quit dating, but they were still friends. In fact, he talked with her that same night. Okay. She was the one who I think was Snapchatting him, and they were just sending each other pictures of, hey, you remember this when we went to do this and all that? And she's a lovely girl. And they remained friends afterwards. So nothing terrible, but yeah.
Okay.
And she ended up moving states away after that.
You've kind of already answered this question, but I'm going to go through it, being that it's in the outline anyway. So Texas State, the reason he went there, as you've already stated, is a good music school, good sound school, very well-renowned program. And like you said, he had to make certain grades in junior college to be able to even get in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Texas State's it's not one of the big, it's not A&M, it's not Texas, but, they have things that they're really good at. And this happened to be one of the kind of unusual, and I didn't believe it when he told me. It's like one of the top 10 in the country. That why would Texas State have this program that's so good? But they do. And he went to visit we went to visit the campus, and of course it's a good location relative to where we were. I was the only one, I think, in the state. And so he, once he kind of made that visit, that's what he wanted to do, and couldn't wait to get it started.
Yeah. All right. And of course, we know that he disappeared in December. So did he just start like a few months before that going there? Or he'd been there for like a year, or
no, just that semester
there?
This is the end of the fall semester. And of course, if you remember, this is back, COVID time. And that actually, what ended up happening, I think he got to go to classes for maybe a week, probably 2 weeks max. and then they shut the campus down. If you remember back then, all of our businesses, all college campuses, everything just shut down.
Sure.
And so for the entirety of that semester, effectively, he spent it sitting in a one-room apartment. One of his roommates never even came back to his apartment. He just stayed with his family. The other two roommates were seniors. They were in a fraternity. They had a very different, I mean, they were in a different place in life. So there was no connection there. And as I said, Jason being so extroverted, I mean, he literally only got to go to campus for a couple of times. You know, he never got to go to a college party at Texas State. He never got to do anything that college is. I mean, that's, you know, part of college is meeting new people and going to parties, socializing and walking around a college campus, talking with professors, attending lectures. He got to do none of that. He sat in a room like this, looking at a webcam for recorded for school, and a couple of his professors literally didn't even do that. They just handed a syllabus and said, there's going to be 2 online tests this semester, good luck, and gave him a book and a syllabus and that. And, you know, Jason being non-directional and not the dedicated student that, you know, for a dedicated self-driven student, that wouldn't be an issue. But for Jason, that's like the worst thing you could possibly do to him. Not to mention, so, you know, he's not getting anything of what his dreams were for this experience. And I think just everything kind of, you know, emotionally, I think the walls just kind of close in on you.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you is that, you know, for me, you know, I'm an introvert. If I never leave my condo, I'd be fine with that, just doing unfound work or whatever else. Obviously, most people are not like that. You know, I'll admit that during COVID, it really wasn't that big of a change for me. But if you're going to a public school or any type of school and like that, and especially if you're extroverted, that is a huge change. You have an expectation, and then it's something different. How do you think he emotionally and mentally handled that over those few months?
Well, as I've said before, I think, and that's what kind of part of this journey for us as parents has been, is trying to understand better what he could have been going through as to why would he do the things that he did. Like, why was he smoking marijuana as much as he was? Why was he doing all that? And I think that's the reaction. I mean, you choose your form of self-medication, honestly, whether it be alcohol or marijuana or Prozac or fill in the blank. Especially for that time, for an extrovert sitting in a room with no human contact, that's like a level of hell. I mean, so I think that in particularly to start this new experience with such high hopes and such dreams, and then to have it turn just on its, 180 degrees and be nothing like that. I think that's hard for anyone. I don't care at my age or Jason's age at 21, even much more so, because you don't have, COVID for me and sitting, spending too much time at the house. I had my wife, I had my dog, I had human connection, but to be denied human connection when you crave it as kind of who you are, that's not good for any of us. And I think it really did impact Jason. So I think it really did, so much of, people, like the police officers and all that make him out to be some kind of druggie or something like that. I don't think that's true. I mean, number one, I know Jason, but I also, if you take a step back and you say, in this circumstance, I don't think it's an unreasonable reaction to all of those events. I think we would all choose some form of escape, whatever it might be. Someone might be comfortable binge watching Orange is the New Black or whatever. I can't even remember what I binge watched back then. Actually, I do. I remember I watched the entire Star Wars animated series.
Wow.
But, was that when Game of Thrones was on and everything else? I mean, that's what you did, but I still had my wife, around the house. And of course I still had the church, and I got it out and about, but for Texas State, they, around the Austin area, they had at least for Texas, some of the most severe restrictions, just kind of the politics of that particular area. They shut the whole campus down for that whole entire semester, and the only times we saw him were, he came home in October to vote, and he came home for Thanksgiving.
And so I was just going to ask you that. So how many times, once he went there, being that he went missing while he was driving back home, how many times did he drive back and forth while he was at Texas State?
So this would have been, December was his third trip.
Third trip.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So people need to keep that in mind. So maybe still a little, but of course, we'll get into this later with GPS and all those things. We'll get into that later. But we do have to talk about this pre-trip conversation that he had with someone. What did Jason's friends say about it? I've read, I want your opinion on it, of course, but, I've read that, maybe Jason didn't quite seem like Jason. What do you know about it? I know you've spoken to this friend, this pre-trip conversation that he had right before he got in his car to come home. What can you say about it?
Yeah. Well, he was talking with a couple of people that day. I know Lisa's talked with the guy who videotaped the conversation with Jason. He said Jason was kind of very different, effectively so stoned he wasn't acting like himself. Okay. I don't really know that young man that well. He actually went to the same high school as Jason, but Jason never knew him in high school. We never knew him or his parents or anything like that. He never mentioned them in high school. I think frankly, probably one of the people he got to, as I understand it, he got to know him online in this semester while he was sitting at home. Okay. And I think he did talk a lot about drugs and whatnot. Okay. The other friends he's known since high school also go back to high school, one of which was he was coming back here to visit and play games and stuff like that with them, which is what his plan was with them. And another good friend of his that goes all the way back to elementary school. They said he wasn't, in their conversations with Jason, they were more worried about like him not getting enough sleep, not eating well enough, and everything more so than just the pure conversation about drug use. Okay. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So have you had a chance? So did this conversation, like, for example, we're doing this on Zoom, this is getting recorded. Did that conversation he had with that particular person that we're talking about, did that get recorded? Did you have a chance to assess that for yourself, or you just have to take this person's word for it?
No, I think it was I think it was FaceTime, and they were FaceTiming. Okay. As far as I know, Jason didn't know he was recording it, and the young man's reasoning for doing so is he said that Jason was acting so weird and whatnot that he was going to show it to him later for a laugh or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. Right. I am thankful. I grew up at a time where we did not have cell phones when I was in college. Yeah, there are many things and many times, shall we say, I am very glad my friends did not record me. And if I had known they had recorded me, it would have been a spirited conversation over that recording, let us just say. Okay. So I that would not be, I don't know, that would not be so much normative behavior. That young man hasn't really been forthcoming to us or to law enforcement or whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll move on then. So we know this conversation happened.
Mhm.
We're just taking this guy's word for it. He said that maybe Jason wasn't like himself. However, other people, I'm not so sure we're willing to go that far regarding that the same day as the conversation took place. But it does sound to me that maybe there were a little, you as his father, mother too, maybe there were concerns about Jason, given what we've already talked about, that he goes there and he's stuck in a, doing
Oh yeah.
classes over a camera and everything else. There might have been a few concerns about, him being there and being by himself. Am I right?
Oh yeah. No, and I think, and just to be clear, I'm, it's funny how people like from the outside kind of they they insert themselves and kind of judge what we might be thinking or whatnot. I don't have a problem saying that Jason used marijuana. To think that a college student used marijuana, if that's a surprise to you or a major grounds for judgment, okay. But especially given the particular circumstance of what was going on with Jason and COVID and stuff like that, I look at it more in terms of he was handling the situation in the way that he chose to. Does it make me happy? Does it make me proud? No. But if I were in that same situation, I can't say that I wouldn't have necessarily traveled down that same road. I'll be honest. I know that I well self-medicated with alcohol much more than I should have at any time in my life was when I was in college. I drank way too much, and I don't do that anymore. We generally grow out of those self-destructive behaviors that we did when we were 21. So I don't, I mean, glass houses, throwing stones type of thing. But also, too, I think knowing Jason and how excited he was for this, for his out, and frankly, in looking through all of his stuff, it wasn't just that he was self-medicating. He was, whether I agree with it or not, he was really trying to go down a path of self-discovery with this. He was very much, and it was some of it's stupid metaphysical stuff I don't agree with theologically or otherwise, but opening his third eye and all, and that's kind of one of the things I've come to find out, that this kind of esoteric theory is present in Texas State kind of subculture, the college, and that's part of the kind of the weird conversations you have in college where you think you know all the answers and can discover all those answers. So I think, for better or worse, he was traveling through those questions and trying to discover more about himself in the midst of this, frankly, unhealthy level of drug use. And I would say that my hope, and I think this would be true for anybody, but our hope would be that we learn through these experiences when we're in college, we grow out of them and we mature into a different person. They make us who we are, but we don't stay where we were or in the same behavior that we did when we were 21. We grow up, we grow out of it, we mature, and something at least interesting, if not healthy, comes out of it for all of us. We learn something about ourselves. If anything, we simply learn our tolerance for alcohol and how we should, moderate our behaviors. And, a lot of us, frankly, leave almost all of those behaviors behind. We don't drink, we don't smoke pot, we don't do a lot of things that we used to do when we were that age. And I think that's pretty normative. So I don't, I try not to get too hung up on it. I think it's a factor in as much as, do I think Jason was as in full possession of his facilities as he could or should have been. And I would simply say no. I know because it was right at the end of finals. He hadn't been eating correctly. He hadn't been sleeping enough. He was trying, I know academically, he was under a lot of pressure and was trying to do very, very well. And was, we've all pulled all-nighters, and we've all, tried to carry on after multiple all-nighters. And we usually learn that's not the best way to approach our academics, but that Jason was in the middle of that and was doing that, and then was coming home right at the end. And I think that one of
did you know he was coming home? This wasn't a surprise trip. No, you knew he was headed home.
Not at this particular time. I knew he was. So just to make it clear, hang on a second. So both he and his brother were in college at that time. Their older sister had already graduated from college and was living out of state. She was going to be coming home for Christmas, and the boys were both just finishing up finals at their respective universities. So I knew that they were all going to be coming home that week, but which day they were coming home, because for both of them, they had both said, well, my last final is, say, and I don't know the particular date, but say if my last final is Tuesday, I'll probably not come home Tuesday night. I still have to pack up, still got to do laundry. I might hang out with a couple of friends for a couple of days, that type of thing. And it wasn't, really pressing, because we didn't have any family plans until all three of them got home, right. Which their sister wasn't due home until at the end of, this happened on Sunday night. She wasn't due home till either Friday or Saturday. I can't remember which day she was coming in. So the week, as it were, was relatively flexible. We weren't in a rush or anything else like that. And they both had cars. So
he didn't call you or anything to tell you he was, it would have had he not, of course, wrecked, had he not gone missing, he would have showed up, I guess, early in the next morning, and he would have just been, surprise, Jason's here.
And probably scared the what out of me.
Okay. All right. So he didn't, maybe he was looking to surprise you. Maybe that's,
I don't know how most people were in college, but I can guarantee I did the same thing and came home at an early morning hour at my parents' house also, and my kids did the same. But yeah, so it wasn't, we were expecting him home on, and I don't think, and knowing Jason, and Jason was mercurial in that way, I don't think he necessarily planned to come home until the plans coalesced, because as I understand it, their conversation, he had been talking with friends, and all of a sudden everybody said, well, heck, I'm just going to go ahead and go home, and we're all going to get together and hang out. And Jason, I don't think, was planning on coming home yet. He was at least going to wait till the next day. But if all of his friends were coming home, he was a night owl, and he was definitely a night owl. Driving at midnight was not, getting home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning wouldn't have been something that would have bothered him at all.
All right. So you didn't know. So he didn't let you know. Maybe not too unusual. And so, of course, when you found out, and we're going to get into that in a moment, this was kind of a surprise to you that he was even on the road. What kind of driver and navigator would you say, once again, because it seems like he wrecked? Of course, we're open to other ideas maybe, but what kind of driver was he? Navigator? What kind of driver was he?
Typical college kid, not the best of drivers, not that observant, and he certainly didn't drive. None of them drive defensively. Navigating, he was definitely of the electronic age. We tried to teach all of our kids how to read a map and all of those types of things. I grew up in the non-electronic age, so I read a map. For him, typical, hey, tell me what your address is. I put it in my phone, and it's going to be Waze, or it's going to be, Apple Maps, or it's going to be Google. And, if it, it's happened, and, it happened to all three of our kids from time to time. And maybe this is just kind of the nature of living around a big city. Those maps don't update all the time. I remember, his sister and another friend from high school, they were going just from where we lived up to Kingwood, which is from the south side of Houston to the north side of Houston. Takes about an hour, not too big of a drive, but you have to go from one freeway to another to a loop and all that. It's not a straight shot. And for whatever reason, whatever they were using, Google Maps, Waze, had them get off by Minute Maid Park, which is where the Astros play, which is Midtown area at night. It's not the worst part of town, but it's not where I want my teenage daughter to be driving around with another teenage girl. But they went exactly where it's, if it sent them off the edge of the earth, most 20-something-year-olds would go straight off the edge of the earth because that's where Google Maps sent them. And Jason was very much that way. And I think that could or could not be a factor. If you punch in and I know on his phone, because I've had his phone, he punched in sitting in his apartment complex parking lot, our home address, and hit go. And the directions will take you directly to Luling, to that intersection. And when his phone turned off, he does not have a sense of direction to be able to know if you've ever driven that made that jog. It's not intuitive by any means. Okay. Because you have to go over two blocks and then take a left, and that'll take you out to I-10. And he didn't make that jog, I don't think.
Okay. So let's move on to this now. We're going to look at this from your point of view, how you experienced this, both you, of course, and your wife. But how did you find out about Jason's car being up against the fence in just outside of Luling, Texas? How did you find out about that?
Well, the initial call was at around 2:00 in the morning. Lisa answered the phone. I remember what did she say to me? She said something like, "It's the police about Jason." And as a parent, that's the nightmare, right? Yeah. I mean, well, what do you mean? And he said, his car's been found, but he's not there. And I mean, I've driven through Luling a couple of times. It's because Lisa's sisters live in Austin, so that's one way to get to Austin, but it's not the way we go to Austin. I'd been through Luling probably as much as Jason. I think we've been through there to move him up to college and back, and maybe once or twice just from here to there. I know Luling because the Buc-ee's stop on I-10 is at Luling. That's what I know of Luling, the town of Luling, and the rest of the directions. I know a lot more than I used to know. So
yeah, it's certainly a town like if you blink, you'll miss it. I mean, it's just not much.
So it's it's kind of small town like a lot of other ones. Yeah. I didn't actually find out that it was up against the fence. In the way it was, the officer just said it came up he kind of said where the gravel road is, and that it came up to rest against a fence. So I kind of found it for myself. Having been a trawler, and I used to do a lot of accident cases, I've been to a lot of auto accident scenes. That's part of what I did.
Interesting.
I was an attorney for Allstate, so you did a lot of that. So I knew what I was looking for in the middle of the night, and you could see where the tires went off, and then you could see the impact onto the fence. You could see that. So I knew that. I didn't know exactly how it came up to rest until I saw the picture, and then it kind of made sense.
So you went right. So did you go right up there? Did the police say, "Well, you should come up here," or that was just
no? He never did.
He just jumped in the car right away. And
well, we waited because at first, he said, we just got caught out there, and let me kind of sort things out. And so I probably waited for probably a little bit over an hour before I jumped in the car. Because we expected immediately that we'd hear back from him, and he's trying to do stuff, and he's like, "Let me call you right back." So it's you're waiting on pins and needles, and the whole time we were waiting, I'm like, okay, because Lisa and I were talking about, it's like, okay, so what would we expect and what we decided is Lisa would stay home because the home phone is there in case Jason got a ride or something, or there was some contact at home. Someone needed to be there in case he came home or something. Yeah. We know because we have our home phone. That's the one phone they've always memorized from when they were, in elementary school. If there's one phone number he's going to remember, it's our home landline, not our cell phone numbers, because no one remembers a cell phone number, right? Because I knew he didn't have a cell phone. We already knew then because we had the family find my phone, so we found his phone. Yeah, and it was in the car. Yeah, and because we were like, well, wait a second, it's moving. Well, that was when the tow truck was towing it, and so I knew his phone was in the car, which worried me to no end. That's when once we figured that out, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to look, because for him to not have his phone, that's not, I mean, if there's one thing he's going to save from anything, it's going to be his phone, and maybe his fish, but that would be, he'd say that before anything. And so that's when, frankly, we really started getting worried. So the whole time we were waiting, I was packing up because I knew it was cold. So we were putting up, blankets and changing clothes and, food, water, whatever we could think of that he might need. And I just hit the road, and Lisa stayed, and I made really good time to Luling. I bet you did. I don't remember any of it because frankly, the whole time I was going there, I was expecting any minute to get a call that Jason is fine. He's got him. Yep. I wouldn't have cared if he's got him and he's sitting in jail. Mm-hmm. I was ready for all of those alternatives. But that's what I expected the entire ride. And to actually get there, and I got there and it was pitch dark. It was probably about.
And we should state that it's not close. I mean, how long of a drive is it from your place to Luling?
It's a couple hours.
A couple hours. Right? Yeah.
I got there. It was a little bit after 5:00. I know it was before 5:30. So it was between 5 and 5:30. It was still dark. And I knew the name of the, towing company because the guy gave me the name of the towing company. So I put that in on my phone and I went there directly and I looked them up and it said 24-hour towing. So I figured someone would be there. So I went there and there was no one there, but there was a tow truck driver there who was not the tow truck driver that towed Jason, but he had heard about, on the radio or whatever. And I said, where is that? Where did he tow the car from? Because the car was there. It was locked up. It was in their impound lot, locked up.
Okay. By the time, already a couple hours later, it's already been towed from the scene. Yes. It's there. It's not out on that road against the fence anymore.
Yeah. The officer towed it almost immediately.
Okay.
Effectively, that's all I did is clear the scene and drive down the road. So I knew the phone was there in the impound lot because I could see it on the Find My Phone. The car was locked up. No, he didn't have. He couldn't get. He didn't have that key. He couldn't get in there anyway. He said someone will be there about, I think, 7 that could open up the lot. And so he told me approximately where it was off the freeway, the highway that runs between Lockhart and Luling, I think it is. And so I said, okay, how do I get to that one? He told me. So I was riding up that freeway, that highway, and my wife was watching me on her phone, watching my location. And she's like, because she had been talking with the officer more than I had. And she's like, I think you're past where the accident happened. And I said, well, call him. And because I'm here, give me the exact location so I can go help to search. And that's when she called him and he was in bed asleep. And, I think if he had it to do over again, he would do none of what he did. Honestly, I just think everything he did not according to the book. And he just had a really bad day as an officer and the choices he made. And I don't think he would do the same again. But anyway, he had the car towed, drove around along the road. In his mind, thought it was a drunk college student who got a ride from a buddy.
Yep.
And went home, went to bed, didn't tell his shift change to keep looking. So I was literally the only person out there looking for Jason. And that was probably the most unexpected thing, because I expected to find an accident scene and into him. I know we've all seen him on TV. That's what I expected to find. I expected to see people searching, so I was just going to help. Mm-hmm. I was the only one, and so just driving down the dark road really slow, going from, because he finally told me where, so I went down Salt Flat Road, and I think from the outskirts of town to where the accident is. That night, I think I saw a coyote, which was really surprising, but I saw, I think, 3 different sets of deer, and I think some wild hogs too, maybe, just in that brief couple of miles. And it was very dark, and it was very cold. It was very clear, and just driving slowly down the road, I was thinking any moment that I would see Jason, walking
along. Yeah.
And there aren't many houses, but I kept thinking to myself, I would slow down in front of every house, because they're country houses. You don't just pull up to a country house. It's a good way to get shot in Texas. Yeah. So I wasn't going to do that, but I was looking for lights. Is anybody up? Is there anybody moving around? And I didn't see any of that, because I was like, if lights are on and people are moving around, I was going to pull up to their house and say, I know this is a stupid question, but did my son knock on your door? Type of thing. And I didn't see any of that. And the area around where the accident occurred, there's not houses anymore.
So is your understanding then that this police officer just came upon his car by accident? It wasn't like a passerby saw the car and they called it in. This cop was just driving along and boom.
No. A volunteer firefighter. His volunteer station was over by Lockhart, closer to Lockhart, but he lives off of Salt Flat Road. So he was going home from his shift or a party or something at the fire station, and was coming home, and he passed it. Wow. And so he stopped, and he saw the car up against the thing, looked in, saw that there was no one there. He turned all his lights on and all that, and, shined his, I call it a hunting light, the kind, that's on the vehicle. Didn't see anything, called it in and said, there's a car here, lights are still on, key in the ignition, the back window is broken out, I don't see anyone here, you might want to send someone out. And that's when they sent the trooper out. So that's how they got the call.
That's how it got started. Okay. Regarding that, what time was that approximately? Do you know, like, the approximate time that the car was first found? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to try to determine.
If memory serves, it was either, it's about an hour window, so it's either 12 midnight or 12:30. I'm trying to remember which one it is, because his phone went out at either 11 and the car was found at like 12. Or his phone went out at 11:30 and it was found at 12:30. I think the phone went out at about 11, sitting at that intersection in Luling, and an hour later, that's when the volunteer firefighter saw the car.
All right, so we have this hour window.
Yes, it's an hour window, a couple of miles of road.
All right, so he calls it in. The trooper goes out. Because that's what usually happens. You find some car and you're thinking it's a drunk driver. He doesn't want to get caught. He's running off. What are you going to do? We'll find out. And like you said, this guy ended up going home, and you called him and he's in bed. Like some hours later, like 5 hours later, he's in the bed.
Yeah, it was weird because, I had found the clothes on a line on the road, and I even asked the tow truck driver, I'm like, did you see the clothes? And he goes, yeah, I saw the clothes. And I thought, and the tow truck driver he goes, I thought it was like one of these arguments between a man and a woman, and she was throwing she had to pack up all of his stuff, and she was throwing it out of the car because she was so mad. That's what he thought it was, because he saw the clothes, and he told the officer, but he goes, I don't pick up stuff because, frankly, he didn't say as much, but I think he said, well, I figured that's what the officer would do because it's potential evidence. But, my job was to tow the car from A to B, and that's what he did.
All right, just to be clear, though, you drove out there. So the trooper was out there, the tow truck was out there. You get there at 5 a.m. approximately, and Jason's clothes are still out there in the middle of the street.
Correct. The only thing the trooper took was his backpack because it had the marijuana in it.
Okay. All right. So he went through it and then found that, took that, but left all the clothes right there in the. So when you say that, it was there like a suitcase or a bag?
It's a backpack.
Backpack was out in the middle of the road. So somebody could have run over it if they weren't paying attention. I mean, to that point.
Yeah, the backpack was actually set on the side of the road, not too far from where his toiletry bag was just a Ziploc with shaving cream and toiletries, and also his fish was in it was a plastic tumbler, not unlike this, that had and the reason he would bring his fish is because it had a breathing hole for his fish to have oxygen. So his betta fish was also there. So his fish and toiletry bag and just a little bit up the road was where his backpack was, but the officer took the entire backpack and left all the clothes and the other items in the road.
Okay. Of course, we realized by the time you got there, the car was not there. You approximately, being you weren't there when the car was there, how far away were these clothes from the car?
Probably 900 yards.
Wow, that's far.
Because what happens is, so you're on a gravel road, and the road curves. The clothes were in the road. The toiletries and fish were still on the side, up against the side of the road. It's a dirt road, so you're talking grass and then gravel. So it was on that verge. And then his backpack had been probably a few dozen feet further up the road, and the road curves, and that's where the accident occurred, after the curve. And what could have very well happened is if he didn't navigate the curve correctly, could he have fishtailed and overcorrected and ended up against the fence or something like that.
All right, so what we're saying is those things were not out, because we've all seen car wrecks, and we sometimes understand how things go flying. This was certainly not that. No. This was the cars down there. The clothes are even before you get to the car. And
I'm traveling. So if I'm driving, I'm traveling. Luling is behind me. The crash scene is in front of me.
Yeah.
When I'm seeing the car, and I was driving slow. My lights were on. I'd already had animals coming across, but I was driving very slowly, windows down, yelling for Jason, looking for Jason. And I'm driving up, and it's starting to get a little bit light by that time.
Yeah.
Because I had already gone to the tow truck lot, and I saw, and I didn't know what it was. And so I stopped before I stopped, and I'm walking up, and I knew it was Jason's clothes. I know his clothes. I knew the shirt. I knew the shorts. I knew the shoes. I knew the socks. I knew it all. I knew it was all his. And, I recorded it. Number one, I was a lawyer. So I just to record it in case, because it was weird to me, because I'm like, why would he have not picked up? I mean, your general rule is you pick up everything. It may or may not be useful, but you secure the evidence properly, and then you sort it out later, whether it's evidence or not. And it was just weird. It's, that it was all there, and I knew it was Jason's. I knew his stuff, and I picked it all up. At the time I was like, why is it lying out here in the middle of the road? And I was thinking at the time, was he walking on the road and was looking for like a jacket or something in his bag? So maybe he was pulling stuff out and was cold and found the jacket and didn't put the rest of his clothes back, or I didn't know what was the story, but I picked it up and kept going to try to find the accident scene, which was right down the road.
Okay. Did it look to you like these things had just been dropped there, or just kind of scattered about, like placed?
They looked more like they had been dropped and taken off. I mean, well, you can see the video. I mean, his watch was laid down. His shoes weren't, tossed. They were flat. The shirt looked like more you'd be if you just take it off and put it down. So it didn't look. It wasn't tossed to the side of the road as much. Now, who did they run over? I didn't see any tire marks on any of the clothing, so my guess is they saw it and just
drove around it.
Just didn't run over it and didn't care to pick it up.
When you were doing this, when did it start to occur to you that this car is kind of in the wrong place? I mean, he shouldn't even been on this road if he was driving from his school to your home. When did that occur? Right away?
Because I'm like, I mean, frankly, you're like, where in the hell am I? I mean, I've never been out on Salt Flat Road. There's no reason to be out there. It's an oil field effectively and a cow pasture all wrapped up in one. There's no reason. There's no reason to be out there. I didn't really, frankly, know much where I was. There's no reason to be out there. There's no body out there. There's no.
You realized right away that car wrecks happen. We know how dangerous driving is just in general, no matter where. But you really realized right away this is not the road he should have been on. He should have been.
Oh yeah, I knew where he should have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time I'm driving this road, that's why I'm thinking that for whatever reason he got turned around. And I remember thinking to myself, what the heck did Waze or whatever tell him to do? Because how could he get so turned around, or what could have happened for him to? Because and that's one of the things in hindsight, and that's where I wonder how much of the phone being kind of down in that annoying place, how much of it was he was thinking that, well, while trying to drive and fish for the phone at the same time, and it's not unreasonable to think, I don't know where the heck I am, but as soon as I get a hold of this phone, I'm going to hit, I'm going to pull it up again and it'll reroute me and I'll get the heck back out of here and on the road. Because after a certain time, we've all been diverted and men never like to ask for directions, let's be honest. And, I guess after a certain point you think it's probably going to take me a different route home, but it doesn't matter as long as I get home. So what to do? That's my guess as to, because part of it in retrospect, and especially if you've ever driven it, it doesn't take you long to go. A thinking, rational, wise person would say, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn back around and I'm going to head back into town because I'm not supposed to be out here. This is not the way to get there.
I should not be on a gravel road driving from one city to another city in Texas.
Yeah. But, I don't think he was on Waze. I don't think it was, I think he was simply not on Waze and was just trying to get to his phone so he could get back and it would tell him the way to go. I think he knew he wasn't supposed to be out there, but didn't care that much as long as he could get rerouted back home, as soon as he got hold of his phone.
Just a little speculation. We just really don't know. All we know is the car ended up in a place it's not supposed to be. Okay.
Certainly.
So how long did it take before he got, of course, you're out there by yourself at this point. How long did it take? And we know that searches have happened since, but I just want to talk about that search at that time. What was done right at that time, that next 24, 48, 36 hours of time? Who showed up and what was done?
Right. So the way, and just so people understand, so in Caldwell County, which is where it is, the city police handle the city of Luling, city limits. We were well past the city limits. Where it becomes Salt Flat Road, you're out in the county. When an auto accident happens out in the county, the highway patrol handles it. So if you call 911 for an auto accident, the dispatcher will send out highway patrol, which is what they did because they were out in the county. So highway patrol maintained control of the case until it was at least a day or two after the accident. Caldwell County Sheriff's Office didn't take the case over until later.
Okay.
So the highway patrol were the ones who were responsible for, like, they're the ones who called Texas Search and Rescue to start looking. So probably by lunchtime that next morning, Texas Search and Rescue was already mobilizing to be out there. And the initial search is very different than, of course, the later searches.
Right.
Initial searches, they literally brought out bloodhound teams from the prison system, live tracking dogs, to where they were trying to, the dogs who smell the clothes. I mean, they literally had Jason's clothes, and we had bloodhounds smelling the clothes and, going off in every direction. So for the first day or two, it was very much a search for a living person. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening, of course, is a lot of the dogs were hit on that pond. And that's when things switched to where they thought that he was in that pond, for that first week, which came to dominate the search for that first week. They did a lot of, so they were searching around, but they were also working the pond as they started to drain it and stuff like that.
Were as listeners know, I'm not the biggest fan of dogs. I know they make a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of things that going on out there. I'm not I don't have a lot of confidence in them, but what did the dogs say about the car being in one area, but as you stated, the clothes being 900 yards away? Could they prove that it was Jason who walked that distance and dropped the clothes there? Was that ever determined in that time? Do you remember?
As I remember, really their starting point was more where the clothes were found than where the car was found. They did establish a scent trail from point A to point B effectively. And that's where things kind of diverged. They sent some down the road, some on the shoulders. Effectively, if I remember correctly, what they think the scent trail said is it, led from the car to the clothes. And then right after the clothes, where the clothes were found, by where the pond is, the road it goes this way. And if you're driving towards Luling, on the left-hand side, after the clothes, and you're talking probably 50 yards, is an entrance to what is where some holding tanks and some pumper wells are. But there's a gravel road that leads up over a hillside, and on the left side, if you're driving up the hill, it goes down to where the pond is, and to the right side, it goes to where what we call the Little White House is, which backs to the pond, but it fronts to the road. And the dogs seem to think the trail, he walked around the house, I think, looking for help, but the house was boarded up. All the doors are nailed up. It's only used occasionally for hunters or like oil field workers who need overnight, just to stay there. It's just a relatively abandoned house, but it's in decent shape. It's not abandoned and derelict by any means, but it's not occupied. The nearest house is probably, actually, the nearest houses are, if you kept going up Salt Flat Road, there's a house off the road, and the rest are off that highway that I was traveling up and down. So there's not a lot of houses out there by any means. Within probably a mile radius, I don't know if there's a single house.
Okay, and I'm going to be doing a map analysis
Yeah,
video, as I've already told you. Kent knows that I'm going to be doing that just to explain some of these
yeah.
for all the audio people. Well, how would you explain the topography and the difficulty of searching that area? A lot of woods or a lot of open spaces? I think a lot of people start thinking Texas, they think all these open spaces, but
Yeah,
that particular area, how would you describe the area? Of course, you've already talked about the pond. I'm guessing
yeah.
there's some other ponds. What
Right.
would you say?
So this is Central Texas. This is not West Texas. This is not Southeast Texas. So it's actually as you move out of the coastal plains where Houston, Brenham, College Station is, you now start where Luling is, really kind of starts what we call the hill country. But you're not in the hills. So this is south of Austin, east of San Antonio. You are in hill country, so it's basically a lot of mesquite and scrub oak, and a lot of there's some creeks and rivers around there, but there's also a lot of I call them gullies, which are they're actually dry washes. And what that is during extreme rainy seasons, you'll have a lot of runoff and you'll have effectively basically a mini flash flood. So you'll have water rushing out into the water system. And then it goes into, for example, Plum Creek kind of goes all around this area that has been searched over and over for Jason. That's kind of the border of
Okay.
the immediate area. The accident and the search, if you were looking at a map, the western border would be Salt Flat Road, and Plum Creek would kind of describe basically a big looping oval that actually comes back and hits goes actually into Luling itself. So that big area of say a mile or so wide and a couple of miles long is kind of a coastal plain, but it's more scrub oak, interspersed with some dry washes. There's oil production there, and if you know what a grasshopper is, just a productive. It's not an oil derrick; it's just that little pump that goes up and down, up and down. Those are kind of scattered throughout the area, and about the only other thing the area is used for is cattle grazing, and it's very lightly grazed. It's not like cattle productive area. It's scrub grass. So it's pretty dry. You would definitely
Any areas where a human might not be able to really go, like so thick that you can't walk through it.
I mean, there's some thickets of live oak, scrub oak, a lot of thorns, a lot of stuff where you would not want to be burrowing into. You can get through most of the areas, but when you're in one of those real thick areas, no one in their right mind would want to go into there because it's just it's so many thorns and so many prickers and stuff like that. You would not want to do that.
Okay. So then, the dog's out there, people searching. How long did that go on? Once again, the initial reaction, the initial search, how long did that go on before everybody kind of went, really, we don't know what to do at this point? How long did that take to happen?
It's really twofold. So it was a week where they were pumping out this retaining pond, and it's a pond that is used for watering cattle. So it's a good sized pond, but it's not any bigger than an acre, say. And the owner gave permission to actually drain the entire thing because they did thermographic scans of it, and they saw. And I've seen the images, and you probably have seen them online. There's an image that looks like there's a body down there. Best they can tell, maybe it was a collection of turtles. They still to this day don't know, because so within 24 to 48 hours, they did an overflight of this entire area. And by entire area, I mean miles. They overflew it with a plane and a helicopter who had forward-looking infrared scans. And that's one of the things I think people keep forgetting is if there was a body, it would have seen it. Mm-hmm. Even if it were someone who were passed, your body retains enough heat that they can see it. So unless it was under something that the the infrared could not penetrate. They should have seen something. And there's plenty of cows and sheep and every kind of thing, coyotes and pigs. They saw plenty of that, but not a person.
Huh.
And that was done within 24 to 48 hours. That really, I think the first day, I think a helicopter was flying to search for that, because within 24 to 48 hours, you're thinking someone's alive, but they could be having, it's kind of like a lost hiker, a broken leg, something like that. Let's rescue them. After 48 hours, it starts to become a whole lot less so, and it really kind of changes. And frankly, in hindsight, I realize the dog teams start changing for what you're looking for.
Yep. All right. So what would you say was the last? Of course, I know you're looking for him to this day. That's why you're on Unfound.
Yeah.
But what would you say was how long did it go before all that kind of stuff ended? The dogs went home, the helicopters went home, and how long did that?
About a week. About a week. Texas Search and Rescue really kind of had two things going on at the same time, with some help from law enforcement. Law enforcement was very good about providing assets. They had sweep teams that were mounted on horses, teams that were mounted on like ATVs that were going over the area. And they also just had lines of, and these are trained searchers, lines of people going through the entire area. And then, of course, they have dog teams of all different sorts working. That's kind of one thing going on. They're kind of searching the entire area, while at the same time, they are actually pumping out the pond the entire time. And that took about a week. Wow. And, they really thought that he was in that pond. We thought he was in that pond. And that was a week from hell. Because any moment, I still to this day have this image of him floating in that pond, his body. And I expected any moment for Sean, the search leader from Texas Search and Rescue, to come over the hill in his black Dodge Ram pickup to tell us that they had found Jason, and hearing those pumps run 24/7 all the time. And we'd go over and look at it, but it's kind of like people say, well, why am I not out there physically searching all the time? I'm the last person in the world that wants to find my son's body. I don't want that to be my last image.
Yeah.
So anyway,
is there a reason they didn't send a diver down there instead of?
They did. They had divers down.
Okay, I just thought it'd be easier to send a diver out than pump out.
No, they actually. Gosh, it's still amazing. They really law enforcement. They brought in dive teams from I think they had dive teams all the way down from Corpus Christi. Drove up with their boats and their scanners and everything, because the water is muck. I mean, you cannot see, but they would rotate. They had dive teams constantly physically searching by hand and foot every inch of that area. And, with poles and everything, trying to, while they're pumping, they had divers in the water constantly trying to figure out what was going on.
I guess I just thought maybe it could be like one or the other. You wouldn't have to pump the water out if you had a diver that could just go down. And you said, it looked like there was some that you could just go down in 10 minutes.
No, initially they brought the dive teams, and the dive teams, and they would rotate them through, and they had a whole bunch of dive teams. I know they had like 4 or 5 working, and, they went and they searched the entire area, multiple times, scanned and physically. And by the time the dive teams, because they expected to find a body. I mean, that's what these dive teams do. This is their skill set, and they really expected to find a body. And once they didn't, they said, we can't, we have to eliminate this pond. And the only way to do it is to literally drain it. And they did. The owner gave permission, and it takes about and they had to bring in the large diameter hoses and set up a whole infrastructure, but they did. And it took about a week. And the whole time, we expected it to be, him to be there, and he wasn't. And they had other teams working the whole time. and the people in that area are just amazing. I mean, people from churches and area, just people heard about it. They just brought food. The county judge, who's kind of like the county commissioner, literally brought us his RV to stay in. He had a trailer RV. He literally brought his own personal RV, so our family didn't have to stay in a hotel, that we could be present at that scene. The people there are just some of the nicest people I've ever met. I may not be fans of some people or some organizations, but I can tell you they're some of the most wonderful people that just, and they just bring food. And I mean food. I mean just tons of food, not just for us. There are probably 100 searchers to feed all these people. And they're just like, I'm a parent too. Here, take this. Great. Just amazing people, really.
Just to be clear, though, you did, of course, we know about the clothes that were seen even by you that very morning when you got there that were still there for some reason, the shoes, all the things all these items. But during those searches, nothing else of Jason's was found.
No, they found, different scraps of clothing, different stuff, and they'd search them and they have like forensic anthropologists on call. So there's lots of boats out there from cows and every other thing. And if there was one that looked like it could be human, they would take a picture of it and put measurements, and they'd say, no, that's a whatever. And they'd move on. And I mean, and they'd bring us, scraps of clothing and all that. And they're like, is this Jason's? And we'd be like, no, never did. As far as I know, there's never been found anything
other than those things that were down the road that you saw initially when you showed up there.
Yeah, nothing
left behind for some reason. Okay, let's move on to what I call the rest of the investigation. This is other things, of course, now that things that we can look at separate, moving on from those first days. This came up, I think, when my friend John Lorden interviewed you with me as a sidekick way back. I think that was a couple years ago now, it's a couple years now.
Yeah, it was.
But we had talked about, and I think there's even been some videos done about the route and how, we've talked about how could he have been over there, but there has been an analysis of, maybe the directions are a little unclear, the way the signs are and the way you're supposed to turn. Is that, you've been there, I've not been there. Is that the way you think about that? Because I'm probably guessing some people have seen that as well. Is it a little confusing when you're pulling into there to Luling that you have to make a right to go down to the other highway? How do you think about it?
Yeah, so to get to, and you can see the pings on Jason's phone. There's nothing about from when he left the parking lot in terms of speed, in terms of time, nothing untoward that would indicate he stopped or had any issue with anyone, wasn't going crazy fast, crazy slow, just cruising along until he gets up to this intersection. And if you're sitting at that intersection, what's supposed to, and it's, I'm trying to remember what they call the names of the street right there. But what used to be First Baptist Church is immediately in front of you. And what you're supposed to do is you're sitting at a light and there's also a stop sign. You're supposed to take a right-hand turn and go 2 blocks go over a railroad track, and then the next light you take a left, and that left will take you out to I-10. That's how you would go. But of course, as you know, and the analysis is done, immediately, it's kind of as he was coming into Luling, before that intersection, he got a Snapchat, and Waze goes into the background, and it never restarted. The last effective ping that we have was right as he was coming up to that intersection. So without Waze to tell him, hey, turn right here, if you go straight, what will happen is you will go straight and then the road will Y, and you'll go through, it's maybe a block or two of some houses, and the road will Y. And if you keep going, and the left fork is the more clear one. And that actually turns into Salt Flat Road. You'll kind of be at the outskirts of town, and you'll be on blacktop for a little while, and then it turns into gravel, and you'll eventually come out to where the accident scene occurred.
Yeah.
And that's what I think happened, without any direction. And did he lose his phone at that intersection, or, from when he was trying to hang up from Snapchat or whatever? That I don't know.
Right.
But, or did something happen at that intersection? It's possible. That little area right there is, as I understand it, is not the best part of town. That's where the drug dealers hang out at night. Were there any there at that particular hour?
Yeah, we want to avoid any speculation. But I remember, once again, I didn't watch it today, but
there's not a flashing sign that says, there is a sign that says I-10 this way, but it's on the far side of the intersection.
Right.
And it's not well lit.
Right.
I've seen it at daytime, but you do not see that at nighttime. And there's no lighting or anything that because normally I would say, if you're going to sign it, you would tell me in front of my face, I-10 this way, but it's on the far side, in a dark intersection. You wouldn't have seen it. You really wouldn't have.
Right. So for listeners, I guess what we're saying is, when you're used to coming up to an intersection and there's a major interstate, the sign to turn right is usually before you get to the intersection, whereas this one, I guess you're supposed to just see it in the distance, even though it's after you're supposed to make your right.
Yes. There's no, like if you're coming into, it's like, Houston, 80 miles this way, right? There's not that. There's no signage there. So yeah.
Okay, very good. That's what I was thinking of. All right, and I'm going to show that in the map analysis as well. Let's move on to the car. Of course, it got wrecked. Was not drivable. It spun around to the point that it was spun back the way that he had come from, where he'd come. And there are pictures that people can find online. I'll try to find some of those to present them to everybody. But any signs of injury inside the car that the police saw? Any blood on anything? Somebody, once again, you being familiar with car wrecks, even though you didn't get to see the car up against the fence, how bad of a car wreck was this?
Well, I guess there's two things. Number one, a lot of people have made a lot of judgments on the damage to the car sitting in the impound lot. Mm-hmm. I think you need to look at, there's only one picture, and it was taken by the volunteer firefighter, of the car sitting up against the fence post. That's the picture. There's only one picture. You know which one it is. It's dark. The lights are on, and you can see you're looking at the passenger side of the car, with its nose facing towards Luling, with its butt facing, the way you would have been traveling.
Right.
And and what appears to happen, and you can see it, and I've also done the video, you've seen it too, that I did of the scene when I found it that morning, and you can see that the tire tracks. What probably happened was the car actually went down and it's a gradual embankment. It's not steep, but there's a little ditch there. Went off the road with it. It had done a 360 effectively with its butt end. It's the trunk leading, and that's what impacted the driver's side rear corner of the car. So where your trunk is, driver's side, that pillar is what hit that. There's a tree, and it hit that oak tree hard, and then I think the rest of the car, because of that impact, stopped, slewed around, and then also hit and came to rest up against the barbed wire fence and another tree, but not nearly as hard. But there was also an impact on the driver's side by the front tire.
Okay.
So it came to rest up against a barbed wire fence. And you can look at the door of the car. What I think happened, and the back window is broken out. What happened, because I looked at the tree, and you look in the car, you can see all the branches from the oak tree. Those must have hit it hard enough to break the window, because there's some pretty good sized branches. That's what actually broke out the window, because you can see it in the pictures. All the branches are in, the glass was in. That's what actually broke the window. police officer thought for some reason that Jason had kicked out the window to get out. I don't think that's at all happened. I think the branches broke it out. Jason probably very much could have been knocked unconscious because there's not any side impact airbags in his car. And that kind of impact would have certainly made him go up against his driver's side door, I think.
Right.
But I think he pushed open his driver's side door against the barbed wire fence and scooched out. Probably how he probably got that little blood on the waistband of his shorts, probably from the barbed wire just pricking his lower back or something like that.
So that was the extent of the blood, though. There wasn't like
No, I looked at the
but
car.
just not a big puddle of blood.
There was no blood. There's nothing looked unusual inside his car. I mean, it's my car, but he drove it. I looked. It didn't. Nothing looked out of place or broken, or there was no. Because I was first and foremost looking for his phone because I knew it was in there.
Yeah.
And I actually couldn't get his phone by going in the front of the car. I couldn't reach it from the front seat. I actually had to go open the back door of the car, and go in from the back seat under the front seat. That's how I actually ended up getting it. I could not reach it by reaching down there. And that's where it was. It was sitting up against that rail of your seat in that really annoying place.
It is. I have a similar car. I have a Sonata, Hyundai Sonata, similar to that car. Of course, a different make.
But I didn't see any blood whatsoever. I didn't see any blood anywhere in the car. They've done the forensic sweep for it. They couldn't, as far as I know, there wasn't any blood. So. I should just ask, no blood on those clothes that were found 900 yards down the street either. Nothing on any of that. Just the little dot of blood, and when I say it's smaller than the tip of an eraser.
Wow.
Probably about maybe a little bit smaller than the tip of an eraser. And it was on I think it was on the waistband of his underwear or the waistband of his shorts. I can't remember which one it is, but it's kind of like back, kind of between above your butt cheek, low back right there where your waist is.
Has anybody, once again, familiar, being that you figured out kind of, once again, given your experience going to crash scenes, has anybody, though, with the highway patrol or local police given you an idea of how fast he might have been going when all this happened?
The highway patrol to my knowledge, never did. And there was no accident reconstruction done. The only accident reconstruction that has officially been done was by the leading expert one of the leading experts here in Texas, and that was through the Attorney General's office. Asked him to go back and reconstruct the accident, and as I understand it, because there were no measurements, because he had so little to work from. Basically, he had my video, the picture, and the car to look at, which is not enough to make a good scientific analysis, which would not normally be what you looked at. It was inconclusive as to one car, two cars, any of that kind of information.
Okay. Any signs that somebody could have been in the car with Jason when this happened?
As far as I know, the only door that was unlocked, because I know the passenger doors were locked because the cop tried to get in through the passenger door and didn't try to get in through the other door. So he said, I think on the video, he says the car is locked, but the driver's side door was unlocked. But that was the only one. The front driver's door was the only one unlocked, to my knowledge. Okay,
so there's no signs that anybody else sitting in the passenger seat. Once again, I'm just.
I don't recall if the driver's side rear door was unlocked or not. At the scene, I don't know if it was ever checked. To be honest, I don't think it was ever checked. I know the front driver's door was unlocked when I walked up to it at the accident scene.
Okay. All right. So no evidence that he could have picked up somebody, let's say a hitchhiker, just as an example. No proof of that.
I don't think so. Knowing Jason, I've taught my kids. Especially at night, that would have been out of character for my kids at that hour, I would have torn them a new one, because you do. I mean, I'm sorry,
All right.
you can call me what you want, but in the middle of the night is something like that. No, that would not be what I'd want my children to do. And I
All
told
right.
them
So
that.
no proof. Once again, we're just trying to be black and white here. No
Yeah.
proof. Maybe pick somebody up, but there's no proof that he did. Regarding the damage on the car, we know there was damage from the actual hitting of the fence and the tree and everything. Any evidence that he might have had a run-in with another car? Was it like another car damage, like paint from another car or something like that?
There's no paint in the forensic analysis. There's no paint on another car on that, as far as we know. There is a lot of damage to the rear end, and the bumper cover is off and all that. That all, I believe, because you can see the picture and it looks intact when it's sitting there, but that tow truck must have just yanked the car just straight out the ditch without, frankly, much care to anything. So I think all the damage to the rear end of the car was effectively done by the tow truck. They claim they did not damage it in any way, but frankly, I don't believe them. I think
All right. How about this? The interior of the car. We already know a lot of his stuff was outside of the car. What was, of course, we're going to get to the phone in a second, but besides the phone, what else was actually still in the car?
I think the only thing I remember in the back seat, I think there was a light jacket, and I don't think much else. I actually took pictures of it all back in the day. I can actually look at it.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess what we're saying is more stuff of his was outside of the car than inside the car.
Yeah, there was nothing in the trunk. Because one of the things I was wondering is, like, did he bring, as we all did back in the day, I was frankly looking for a laundry basket full of dirty clothes, or an overnight bag or something like that, and it was not. And that's because I think he was just going to come back for a day or two and then head back to hang out with some friends.
If you need to take a look at your phone for a couple seconds there, just for that,
now, you can take a break. Asking questions. I'll double check. Here we go. Here's my video.
Okay.
That's the impact that's where the car actually hit, and you can see. Trying to make it so you can actually see it on the camera. Sorry. Yeah. But anyway, I can actually share screens easier than this. But anyway, that's where you can see the rear. But I'm looking inside of the back when I took pictures, because you can see like that right there. That's all the damage that I think was done by the tow truck. But you can see the impact is the part of the damage that goes vertically, right about where the tail light should be. And I don't see anything in unusual in his car, in terms of other clothes or anything like that.
Okay, let's move on to this. Of course, we talked about these clothes. Whereas you said like 900 yards, which is 2,700 feet, which is about a half mile away. That's about a half mile.
That seems awful long.
Excuse me?
That seems awful long.
Yeah, you said 900 yards. That's 2,700 feet. That's a half mile, 5,200.
That's like 9 football fields. So I'm thinking,
was it 900 feet?
A couple of football fields.
So still not close. Still not close.
It's not close. But
close.
I'd say at least 200 yards. 900 just seems like a lot. But
900 yards is over a half mile. Yeah. Okay, so still a couple hundred yards. It's obviously he couldn't have thrown them that far. Somebody had to have carried them or something. Okay. But you keep, what's I think probably has caught a lot of people's attention so far, is you keep talking about Jason's the spot of blood that was on his underwear, but we know that Jason is missing. Are you saying that he changed his clothes after he got out of the car?
No, to be honest, I think the best supposition is he took his clothes off.
Huh.
Because the clothes he was wearing that day, at least earlier that day, are the clothes that I found in the road.
Huh.
You know,
Okay.
the best answer I could have would be paradoxical undressing. Yeah,
Okay.
if he was
And,
hypothermic.
I'm not. Don't think probably being he's an adult. You wouldn't know every piece of clothing that he. Is there any proof? Are there any of his clothes that are missing, or a pair of shoes that are missing? Like I don't live with my father. I haven't lived with my father and my mother's deceased like over 25 years. If I was, they wouldn't know anything about my clothes or anything else. But looking at Jason's stuff, anything that you would be able to tell that were missing that he could have changed into.
Well, I think it's possible. I mean,
Mm,
he has money. He could have easily bought, sweats or a jacket or jeans that I have not seen or I know of. I don't know of anything missing,
okay.
but I also would not know every piece of.
Right.
I wouldn't know every piece of my own clothing.
Right. Right.
To be honest.
All right. So nobody's been able
know,
to track down, for example, let's just say the shoes. Have you ever been able to determine, is there a pair of shoes that you knew Jason had that have not been found?
not
Leaving
to my
open the possibility that he could have put those on afterwards.
not to my knowledge, but I don't think it's certainly not impossible or beyond any. I would, if there's clothes that he was wearing that night, like,
Mhm.
could he have changed clothes into another complete outfit? Yeah, he could have.
Okay.
I don't know of anything missing that that would have come to mind, because in fact I brought him. I went in his closet and got warm clothes out to take to him in case he
Yeah.
needed. Unfortunately, I couldn't use it. But
Okay.
certainly, we had all his clothes in his apartment and stuff like that. And I didn't, and that's one of the reasons why I was thinking that I would find a laundry bag full of clothes. And that's what I was kind of thinking
Right.
maybe happened, is he had other clothes, because even if it's cold, Jason, would I be surprised if he'd have t-shirts and shorts and slides on in 40-degree weather if he was driving home? No, wouldn't surprise me in the least bit.
Of course.
But of course, if you needed to be outside, I was hoping that there was a basket of clothes or a bag, and he could, I need my jacket, I'm going to put on some sweats, put something on warm before I walk into town or something like that. That's frankly what I expected or hoped. And I had thought originally the clothes that I saw on the side of the road, I was just thinking he had just was digging them out of his bag and just didn't, just left them there. That's what I thought had happened.
Okay. All right.
Because he was getting warmer clothes.
All right. So for some reason, after this wreck, at some point within that hour, we know there's this time frame between the car wreck and then somebody coming upon his car, that he got out of the clothes, whatever he was wearing, including though his underwear, and left that there. They were there.
There was his slides, his socks, his underwear, shorts, and a t-shirt. That's what I found on the road. Okay. Whether he was wearing them at the time of the accident, I don't know. I know that he was wearing at least that shirt during that day. I think after he got out of the shower, I think he put on that shirt when talking with his friends. His name escapes me.
Okay. So. What about, did he have any books that he was bringing home or anything? Where were they? Or did he leave those at school? Being Christmas break, I don't know how many.
No, he didn't have, he had his backpack had all his gaming equipment, PlayStation stuff, headset, all that kind of stuff. I think his Switch and some games. And there was enough room, I think, for his wallet and just a couple of other, things. But basically, and his laptop was in there and stuff like that. So there wasn't, it was full with his computer and gaming equipment.
Okay, so the keys were in the car, the phone's in the car. Did you say his wallet and ID were in the car or somewhere?
His wallet was in his backpack.
Wallet was in the backpack. All right, so seemingly, whatever happened after this car wreck, he just seemingly went off with nothing. Just seemingly didn't take anything with him.
Yes.
Seemingly,
I mean that's
once again the things people carry in the 21st century: our car keys, our wallet, of course, we're women, purse, bags, whatever, phone, ID, All those things were left behind. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go now. We've talked so much about this phone. You found it in the car. Of course, it certainly helped that you had that find my
Yeah.
phone feature, which I think is spectacular. So it was still on. You talked about him driving, and then somebody chatted him, and then it seems like the Waze went in the background, and there are ways to figure that out. But it was on the whole time, even through the wreck, and it was continued.
Yeah.
Was it still on when you got to there?
No, and I intentionally the whole week I kept possession of it. I know how the chain of evidence works. I kept personal possession of it, and I kept it charged, and I kept it on because, like, we have, I didn't know his current password, and when we turned it over to law enforcement, they tried a couple, and of course, with an Apple, you only get so many attempts.
Yeah.
And at some time, and I asked them, don't just keep trying passwords because it's going to blank the phone.
Right.
And someone sometime kept trying whatever passwords, because we have like a password bank, and so we were trying to search, and of course we also had his laptop, so we could see if we could get into that. We could maybe get his current password. It's his new little numeric password.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and they've never said who, but someone put in too many attempts and it blanked the phone. The phone is currently in, they keep having phone forensic analysts look at it, and we've been able to do a partial reboot through his Mac. It's Apple phone. He has a Mac, so those can sync. So we did a partial reboot by syncing those. But yeah, and that's still one of the big frustrations. Is I think smaller town law enforcement just doesn't quite have the forensic.
Yeah, in my experience, big town law enforcement makes these mistakes too. So
yeah. And that's just, and it happened, and so we've lost. Who knows what crucial data could have told us.
So the best you can tell, that phone was on the whole time, went right through the intersection. It was on you. He didn't turn it off or anything. So that phone continued to be on to the very point that you got to the car by yourself and found it in the car.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it only pings every once in a great while when an app's not running. Like, because Lisa watched it and she could tell like where the accident was, and it pinged like once, I guess, while it was in transit to the lot, and then it pinged at the lot. So I knew it was there. I could see the car, but I also knew where. I mean, I could look at it and see, his phone is in that car. So that's why I knew it was there.
Okay. Who was the person, if you can say, we're not here to get it's not in trouble or anything, but just who was the person who just happened to send him a Snapchat or whatever it was right around the time he was getting the lulling? Who was this person? What was the purpose? Just a friend, or who was it?
No, I think it was his ex-girlfriend, and they had been just like,
okay,
chatting and reminiscing, sending pictures of, hey, you remember when we went to so and so, and just back and forth, just simply like that, just a continuation of that conversation.
All right, so she was. They were having this conversation back and forth as he was driving home. Did she get worried when he didn't respond to her? Did that register to her at all that night, or do you even know?
I don't know. I mean, we talked with her quite quickly, because we talked with, immediately after we reached out to all kind of the immediate circle whom he might have contacted, have you heard from him, all that kind of stuff. And, she was one of the people that we contacted, and, she hadn't heard from him after that Snapchat.
All right. So she sent the Snapchat to him. A theory is that this then caused the Waze app. I've had Waze on my phone for almost 10 years now. So I'm very familiar with this app, and I know how these things work. It kind of goes into the background.
Right.
Could have theory caused him to miss this turn.
Yes.
But All right, so she sent, but of course, seemingly he never sent anything back to her. Do you know of any other phone calls or texts that he made to anybody, during this time, or was that the last person you believe that he was in contact with before the wreck happened?
Well, as I understand it, for that one, I think he just opened it up to look at it.
Okay.
I don't think there was a reply or conversation. So
Okay, gotcha.
it was one that had been, I think, sent previously or something
Oh,
like
I
that.
gotcha.
So he just
Okay.
opened it and looked at it.
Okay.
And, and that might have been when he dropped the phone and it went into that, that place or whatever. But
Yeah.
certainly nothing in terms of phone activity, as far as I know, happened. No apps open, no nothing, nothing after that point.
Okay, very good. And we don't have to go through the pings because you found the phone. You have that find my phone feature, which is even better than pinging, and that's how you tracked it down. I guess what it also shows is that I guess the police didn't go through it to find out. How did they know to call you? I guess your registration, you being that he was driving the car, but you own the
Yeah.
car. That's how they ended up contacting you. They figured
Yeah.
out who you
Yeah.
were.
We're the registered owner of the vehicle.
Okay. I have to ask you this. We haven't talked about it for a while, but I'll bring it up very quickly. Was any marijuana found among the things in his car?
No, not that I know.
Okay.
Marijuana was found, I think it was a handful of joints that were found in a pill bottle in his backpack. But as far as I know, I don't think there was any found in his car, any paraphernalia or anything.
And nothing out on the street either.
No.
Okay. All right. Now let's just talk about everything that's gone on since then. I know that there have been searches. I even talked about some of them. I try to keep up on any disappearances that I've been involved in. I did an original Unfound Now on Jason's disappearance on YouTube. And then, of course, John Lord and I, we did that show with you a couple years ago. But there have been, at least looking at it from Florida, there have been a couple big searches since. How are those different than the original searches? How far did you go in each direction? And what if some of those people who have taken part, have they been able to give you any explanation on if we're to believe that Jason walked off? People might be open to some other ideas, but if he walked off, why hasn't been found? What if first of all, let's just start there with these new searches that have been done. How are they different than the original?
Well, I mean, one essential difference is, at least in terms of dog teams, for example, you're working with cadaver dogs instead of live search dogs. We've had, multiple, I guess 8 at least major searches through Texas Search and Rescue. And when I say major, I'm talking, 100 searchers, and you usually search multiple days over a weekend or something like that. Usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday will be full days of searches. They've searched, if you're looking at the map, when you do your map analysis, they've searched the whole area kind of bounded by Plum Creek, has been the core of the search, that kind of that one area. They have searched on the other side of Plum Creek. They have searched all the way over, and I can't remember the number of the highway that runs between Lockhart and Luling. There's Salt Flat Road and then Pupper Road, all the way over to the other side of the highway. They've searched multiple times using horse ATV and just by foot, and of course also having helicopter. A lot of drones, thousands of drone images, and a lot of times what they'll do is have the search teams going out there, and they'll also be doing drone teams. They'll send drone teams out, and then they'll process all of the drone imagery. They worked with a couple of professors who, they did the Gabby Petito case. There's an area of academic expertise as to, what does someone do and where can you find them? And they have like concentric zones as to how far they find them. Usually what ends up happening, end up finding them close to where the car wrecked.
Right.
But,
right.
Kind of within that more immediate area, and the farther you go out, the less likely it is. But they've searched from miles out. They've drained multiple bodies of water. and they continue to do so. Of course, we've had changes in agencies. And the first couple of days was the Highway Patrol, then Caldwell County Sheriff's Office had the case, but then now the Attorney General Missing Persons Unit is the investigator of record for the last, let's see, I haven't really thought about the dates, but last year or so, maybe. Yeah, last year or so. And of course, we have private investigator, and we also have private teams working. But when Texas Search and Rescue does it, it's usually a bigger, more intentional, organized effort where they're searching a particular area or trying to. At this point, they'll usually try to basically have a theory of the case, like we want to go back and look over this area, or we want to go back and look over this area, or last time they went on the far side of Plum Creek, which would be highly unlikely someone traveling, butt naked, barefooted over that terrain all the way to the other side of Plum Creek. But they said, we searched this area on this side of Plum Creek over and over and over again, haven't found him. Let's look on the other side. And of course, then there's always the likelihood that maybe he's not out there because someone else is involved or something, some scenario, other scenario.
I have to ask you this question because this has come up both on some disappearances that Unfound has covered that eventually got solved, and then some others that were unsolved for a while that did get solved. And one of the big issues is that sometimes people don't allow, law enforcement to come on their property. You're not going on our area to search. And in fact, maybe you, being that you live in Texas, maybe you've heard of the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, who disappeared some years ago. There were searches done. He wasn't found. Kind of similar circumstances, although his car was not wrecked. It was out of gas. They did all these searches, couldn't find him. And then somebody locally bought this piece of land. These people were still interested in the disappearance. Go to the new owners. The new owners say, sure, I don't mind. They go onto this piece of land, found Brian, although it's still up in the air. They believe it's Brandon Lawson's remains. Any landowners in the area who said, nope, you're not flying any drones over our property. Nope, you're not going on our property. Anything like that?
By and large, no. Most of the landowners, particularly for law enforcement, Texas Search and Rescue, have been very open. And in fact, they participated and, kind of shown people around and kind of that type of thing. Now, I think when we've had our private search teams out there have been a couple of landowners who are kind of like, we're tired of people coming on our land looking for Jason Landry. I mean, I'm sure there are people who wish they'd never heard our family name before. And that's hard. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I obviously don't really give a flip what they think.
I know.
No,
but you don't have to explain yourself.
But by and large, especially the landowners around the accident, over and over again have been, you have permission to go and have given the people. I mean, there have been people over that property over and over and over again, but they have allowed it because they, and most of them have been very, they're like, I have children too. If I were in your shoes, I would want, now, a lot of them have said, hey, look, I've got dogs and all that. Let's, you don't just show up unannounced. Don't,
Right.
By and large, frankly, with all the problems we have with the border being open and the other issues, it's a bit more problematic for people wandering around on people's land nowadays. As it is. So, I think particularly for Texas Search and Rescue and all that, they get permission and tell them, and, they try no one wants a surprise and someone gets shot because someone thinks someone is trespassing. That would be the last thing anybody would want. But by and large, particularly for the area that's been searched over and over and over again, they've been quite accommodating.
Right. I'm glad to hear that. So, is it all private land, for example, where the car eventually ended up against the fence? I guess that was somebody's private property. Is that all private property, or is there some state land, or is it all just people's area?
As far as I know, I mean, they have, because they've sent search teams out to there'll be a story or a rumor that they'll have, and there've been state parks around the extended area that have been searched. Some places all the way past San Antonio have been searched based on particular stories. But kind of in the immediate area is all private land. A lot of it it's like I said, it's more pasture land and more it's non-residential, so it's a lot less intrusive. You're not walking around someone's backyard.
Yeah.
Now that did happen. They did find a skull and human remains in someone's backyard in Luling, a couple of months ago, which is, it's hard to explain what that's like to get a call from them saying we found something, but so you get your hopes up, but you're also heartbroken all at the same time. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's still amazing to sit here, and it's been like 825 days. I can't even wrap my head and heart around that. Because we talked, I think when we talked, it was what, a few months, probably about 3-4 months after, probably.
Yes. Yeah, I think that might have been February of 2021, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we talked within months, and like I said, I expected him to be in that pond in that first week. And so everything that has happened after then has been unexpected, I guess. And to think of how many searches we've had because I've learned the statistics on how often they find. I mean, it's like 70+% they find within half mile.
That's right.
And yet that same radius has been searched. But of course, if you're looking for bones out in the middle of nowhere, and because like right now, for example, everything's getting green again, and it's with all the undergrowth, it's really, really hard.
Tough.
If you're just, what are you looking for? How big of a bone, and all those kinds of things. If you're, just a piece of a rib bone or something, that's going to be real hard to find. You're not going to find an intact skeleton for sure. Mm. So it's, and then of course, then you start as family to travel down that path and to start thinking about those. That's my baby's bones. Mm. You don't do that. You can't. And, then again, I find myself, gosh, I can't, how many times I've just driven out there by myself and just walked around and been there. You do that too. So, and in some ways it's very comforting to be there, but in other ways, it's also very unsettling to be in that space, because I'm still trying to, what the hell happened? I mean, that's the thing about this whole case.
Yeah.
You're talking a couple of miles of relatively deserted road over a 1-hour window of time. Most investigations are much more, there are a whole lot more variables. This is actually, should be very simple. So why in the hell have we not found him if it's that simple? And that's, I think, one of the things that, I guess there's a couple of things that connect people. I think Jason is connected with a lot of people. He's a very normal kid from a good family. So he kind of connects with people, so they kind of see themselves and their family in this situation. But it's also just from the crime sleuth community aspect, why because you just keep coming back, because there's not a lot of variables along this dirt road,
right?
Gravel road for 1 hour. I mean, it's you should be able to find him. So why haven't we found him? And then that, of course, opens up Pandora's box. Does that mean someone else is involved because he's not out there? And then that becomes, Well,
let's go right to that. That's a good segue into this. I want to talk about this guy who I've seen on TV, and I know that there has been some national coverage on Jason's disappearance. But Abel Pena, former FBI, did you get him involved? Did you ask him to get involved, or did he come to you? Because I would have to say, I think he's kind of put out there. There might be, he's looking into the possibility of foul play. So how did he get involved?
So his daughter actually went to Texas State.
Huh.
And she, if I remember off the top of my head, I think it's correct. She had dated one of Jason's friends. So so she came to her and said, Dad, have you heard about this? And Abel's a retired FBI agent. He lives in San Antonio, which for those who don't know, San Antonio and Luling are, well, I don't know, less than an hour from each other. They're very close, both in Central Texas. So very close. And Abel has a nonprofit investigation agency to help find missing persons. So, with his daughter saying, Dad, I want you to look into this because she didn't know Jason personally. She knew of him. And she's like, I want you to look into this. And so that's how we got contacted. It was actually through kind of his daughter, told him about the case. And he reached out to us. And I mean, we've had plenty of different private investigators want to solve it or whatever, but at least he has that kind of personal connection to it.
Right. But he has put out there, I have to say, it's out there, he's looking into the possibility of foul play. If you can say, how did he get onto that particular angle? Is it just because of what we mentioned a few moments ago that, all these searches have been done, Jason's not found? Is it possible that he did get picked up? Is it possible? Is it because of that, or is it something else?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of rumors and stories that float around kind of, like I said, this isn't the best area. There are drug dealers in this area. Could something have happened at that intersection? And, Jason may have never driven that car out to Salt Flat Road. Someone else, would he have? Now, the clothes he was wearing, there are no bullet holes. There's no blood. There's no nothing. So you have to kind of think, okay, do you make someone take all their clothes off at gunpoint? Is there a witness? All those kinds of things come into this, but, or did something happen along the road? Or, some people have conjectured that something happened after the accident. Like there was the accident, Jason was walking along the road, going back for help. And did he get hit by a car or something? Did he get chased out there? I mean, there are certainly lots of scenarios out there, and there are stories floating around about those scenarios. But in terms of direct, I mean, you'd have to talk to the investigators because part of that for us, and having lived in this area personally, having done criminal defense law and prosecution, is it possible? Yes. Probable? Probably not. But it's certainly within the realm of possibility, given that we haven't found his body. Now, the whole thing about the pigs and eating up the whole body and all that, if you want to talk about that, we can. But
yeah, we're not going to get into that. We don't talk about hogs and wood chippers and things. But yeah,
I mean, that's part of that whole thing is you're really getting almost. I mean, like for pigs can consume much of us, but the odds of them consuming like skull, pelvis, teeth, and all that, it's like that would have to be an abnormal situation. But on the other hand, if something possibly could have happened with some not nice people who've been connected to this case, the rumors floating out there,
so would you say that him looking into this, he's tried to track down where these rumors have come from? And I mean, is there any substance to any of them that he's been able to find yet?
I don't know. I have not. I've not seen it. Okay. I have not. You've seen with the shows of letters and things like that. That come in, tips and all that have come in many times over. Every time something goes out on a TV show or something, tips are generated. They follow them up. But as far as I know, certainly there's not a number one suspect. There's not been an arrest. There's not. Certainly they haven't found Jason's body in a shallow grave or something like that. For the family, we just want answers. Where those answers will lead us,
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know. And that's the frustration. Is you're like, I think it's more likely than not that something like that probably did not, someone else was not involved and his body's out there. But if his body's out there, given the amount of searches,
Right.
good Lord, why haven't we found it? Because certainly it should have, but of course you've been involved and heard about many more. And, sometime, someday, I hope, someone gets us answers, whatever those answers are. We just want to know, because you live life in a limbo until you know the answer. So
Have it here in the outline. Have any medical professionals reached out to you? Have you reached out to any of them? And let's just say that Jason did have a head injury of some type and walked off. Have you asked them how Jason far he could have walked with a head injury, odds of amnesia, or something like that? Is anybody that you trust in the medical field? Have you talked to anybody like that, trying to give you some insight into that?
yeah, we have talked with some. I mean, it is possible, certainly, to have like a traumatic amnesia type of thing. But given the time length and, Jason's relative health and all of that, usually you would not have something that would be this permanent. And, they've done the psychological profile of him, of the family and all the circumstances. Part of that whole thing is, is it a combination of amnesia and running away and all that kind of stuff? I can just tell you, for what I know of Jason and our family, we're by no means perfect, but Jason's not the type to run away. He's not the type to, given the circumstances, given his health and everything else in terms of being amnesic, it would be a very rare case to be, 2 years plus and still for him not to be found. And we have investigated that, all the homeless shelters, of course, all of his data is on every hospital registry. So any emergency room or anything that would have seen Jason in 2 years, it would have hit. So that becomes less and less likely, just given the circumstances. And we constantly have people out there, coming through homeless shelters and other things like that, that would fit that scenario and have not had anything that really makes us think that there's that there's someone there, and then we would run that lead down immediately.
And I'm sure maybe many who are listening, I do know that, I forget how long ago it was. It's probably within the last year. There was this unidentified young man. Was it in New York that
Yes,
they looked into
yes.
to make sure to see
Yeah,
if
that
it
was an
Jason
adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an adventure, man. I mean, we looked at that picture a lot, and it did look a lot. And he has been identified. I think he was from Yonkers or something like that, and who did have some mental and emotional problems. So we're so thankful that that family got answers, and I don't know what's going on now, but I certainly hope that young man has been reunited with his family. And I know that there was some form of reunion. But yeah, that was something. I was ready. We were about to start buying tickets to New York. I tell you that. That was, and that's the thing, is you're always waiting for a phone call that never happens. And then something like that happens, and then you get excited, and then you're back.
The emotional roller coaster. Yeah, the emotional roller coaster. I guess the other thing about this disappearance is that, if he was driving his car and wrecked it for some reason, there are no sightings of him. Nobody saw him walking down the road, even though his clothes were, maybe not, as we talked about, 900 yards, but let's say 300 yards down the road. Nobody local driving by saw it, whether he was naked or clothed or anything else. Nobody's ever come forward like that. That's the other perplexing thing.
No, not to my knowledge. And I know that for law enforcement has knocked on the door of every house along that route. They've looked cameras and everything else, including even game cameras, just kind of to try to find answers, and none. And that's and if anybody's ever been there, driven along that route, you can see how few houses there are. But as far as I know, every single house along that route, kind of heading out, on either side of the road has been personally asked. And as far as we know, not a single person. I'm trying to think, I guess, who would have been the last person to lay eyes on Jason.
Someone at school.
Yeah. I know he talked to one of his roommates, that, he was leaving, but I don't know if they actually laid eyes on each other. I don't think they did. I think they more talked through a door.
I guess the other point is that, are we to believe then that his car really sat there for an hour and it took somebody else to come? Did it really sit there for an hour? Even though it's a gravel road, it doesn't sound like, of course, this isn't downtown New York City. It's out, quote unquote, in the middle of nowhere. But did that car really sit there for an hour and it took an hour for somebody to see it? Or were there other cars going by and seeing it and just saying, not thinking anything of it? That's.
I guess that's possible. I know one of the main, since that's in kind of an oil field area, they do have company trucks, they go up and down there, container trucks and whatnot. I know they've checked with all those drivers and checked the GPS trackers on all of them. And I don't, as far as I know, not a single one saw anything, out of the ordinary. So, I mean, it's possible, certainly.
Yeah.
I didn't see a whole lot of, I know I didn't see another car driving down Salt Flat Road when I drove down it.
Okay.
So
let's move on to this. And maybe this is, being that you are a man of the cloth, you're a pastor of a church. How much have you relied on your faith? And of course, in your position, of course, you're dealing probably with people all the time who are going through difficult times in their lives, maybe being diagnosed with cancer or suffering the loss of, a death of a loved one. Has any of that experience helped trying to deal with this now that you're experiencing this firsthand? Has any of that helped? And how much has your faith helped you?
well, it's made all the difference. Not just, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think I get like the year-end statistics for like the Facebook page for Find Jason Landry, and I think we got over 2.5 million hits on his Facebook page. And I've personally talked to so many people that have been touched by his story from literally around the globe. I mean, Spain, Netherlands, Philippines, just like they'll have episodes of shows about his case that will air literally around the globe. And then I will find out about it because I'll get a direct message. So the story certainly has touched people. And that's what God does. He makes good things out of bad. So clearly, I think that's had an impact. But for us, it makes all the difference. And it's really very simple because I know that Jason is almost certainly in heaven. I mean, that he's passed away. I know he is in heaven if he has passed away. I know his relationship with the Lord. And so that means I'm going to see him again. We're going to spend all eternity together. And that makes all the difference. If I didn't know that, I don't know how I could face the day or any of us, because that makes all the difference. And that's, I think, if there's anything I would say to people is, we're all one phone call away from tragedy. Whether it be a cancer diagnosis, whether it be a loss of a job, you can walk out of your house today and not ever walk back in that door.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to consider is if that happens to you, if this is your last day, where are you going to spend eternity? I know Jason's going to spend eternity in heaven. I know I am. And that makes all the difference in terms of hope, because I still know I'll see my son. And for him to get to heaven before me, I mean, I participated in funerals from children to in their 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd buried anyone over 100. And they're all different, and the stories are all different. but our eternal destination is either heaven or hell. It's as simple as that. And to know that we'll spend all eternity together, regardless of when he got there and when I get there, I don't know how long I have. And so I think that's part of the story, and that has touched people. And I've talked with other college students who kind of see themselves in Jason and said, I make the same choices he makes, and there's no reason that I couldn't have ended up on the side of that dirt road. I mean, no one expected anything like this to happen. No one expects anything to happen. I mean, just driving around Houston last couple of days, I know I passed an accident that probably was a death accident because I know what it looks like. Mm-hmm. It happens every day. And I think about, the scourge of fentanyl killing so many people, which is just terrifying to me to think of all the young people, not just young people, but a lot of people, and we're all living on the razor's edge of life or death, but we don't want to think about it. And I think part of this story is, think of a 21-year-old, much like many of us when we were that same age, to have his life ended just, for a stupid car accident on the side of the road for the 1 or 2 days. That's why, literally you could only get hypothermia in Central Texas probably a couple of days out of the year. And this happened to be one of those days. So, and that's what happens though. Circumstances happen where they all come together, and sometimes the outcome is not what we would desire. And that's true for Jason. It's true for me, true for you, true for anyone. And that's where I think faith comes in, where God's God and I'm not. I don't have all the answers. I don't, and I never will. And I'm okay with that. And I never thought that this would be something that I would have to try to wrap my head and heart around. When you do funerals, you're there for, the weird thing about being a pastor, and I've had it happen. I've literally been at a hospital and I've made a visit from someone who's dying and a baby being born. Mm-hmm. And it's the same visit, the same hospital. I go from one floor to another floor. I go from life to death. And so it gives you, I think, a bit of a different perspective, but it also, you realize that how close we all are. None of us know how many days we have, and just, live the days. That's part of the thing, is particularly when you're talking about family. I mean, you've lost your parents, when all you're left with is memories. Make those memories count. That's part of the thing, is when they're gone, you can't make it up. Have the conversation you don't want to have. Yeah. Make your relationships matter. Make your days matter. Do something that matters. And that's what I would say to people is don't just count days. Don't just live your life thinking there'll be a tomorrow, because there may not be. So if there's something that you want to do it today. If there's a conversation with the loved ones, spend some time with them. Don't wait, because when all you've got is memories and pictures, you sure pray that they're good ones, because you may be left a lot of years thinking about what ifs. Make those as little as possible, and make them be. I mean, we're thankful that we have so many good memories, that we have so much to look back on. It's weird to think that 21 years may be all that Jason had. You never expect that, but none of us know how many years we got. So live them like they matter, and do something with life that impacts other people in a good way. Do something valuable. Whether or not you have my faith or not, I don't think that changes. I think living life with purpose, with a meaning, with value, I think we can all do that. I mean, yes, I hope everybody would come to Christ and have that eternity. But even if you disagree with me on that, geez, make your life of something of value. Make the world a better place for you having existed. And I think that's true for Jason, and I think can be true for all of us. But I think a lot of us, we live life with a someday attitude. And if there's anything that's changed in us for that, don't live for someday, because you don't know when your last day will happen.
Kent, do you have a Facebook page, website, anything else set up for Jason's disappearance? If so, why don't you tell the listeners about all
Sure.
of that right now?
I think it's Missing Persons, Find Jason Landry. I know if you just put Find Jason Landry in there, you'll find it. That's where we try to update. The Attorney General's office has a missing persons cold case unit that is working at it. They work behind the scenes, so they keep us apprised, but there's stuff going on that you can't necessarily say, but we do let people know in terms of searches and stuff like that. They're still ongoing. They're planning the next search, and we'll keep. And I know a lot of people have contributed money. We're also paying some private search teams to go out there. They have been last 2 months. I think we've had 2 different teams out there, and we will continue to do that until we have answers. Because if Jason's out there, and we just have to keep looking, because if there's anything I've learned from so many of these cases, well, number one, there's tens of thousands of people missing right now. Tens of thousands.
Yep.
It's just amazing that how many of us are so ignorant of the suffering of others. There are so many families just like ours. We're no different, just like ours. And I'm so thankful for you and John and all those who work behind the scenes to bring out stories like this, so people realize, number one, there are people out there hurting that need your thoughts and prayers, but also there are missing people out there, and we want them all to be brought home. We want the story to be told, because I can tell you, for a family, every day is the day we hope will be the day we find out. But every day I count yet another day. And I can't believe that we don't have the answers yet, but I just pray that one day we will. And I just thank you for taking the time to share the story and let people know about Jason.
Why don't you give that Facebook page out again one more time, Ken, please?
Sure. Missing Persons, Find Jason Landry. JASON LANDRY.
Kent, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
And that was my March 17th, 2023 interview with Kent Landry, father of Jason Landry. I thank Kent for appearing on both audio and video for this episode. There are 2 videos you should check out on the Unfound YouTube channel that make great companion pieces to this podcast. Number 1, the original Unfound Now I did in January of 2021 concerning Jason's disappearance. And number 2, the map analysis I produced at the same time as this interview. Please give both videos a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel. The major point that comes to mind with Jason's disappearance is of Daniel Villarreal, who went missing under similar circumstances in Surprise, Arizona in August 2020. I mentioned him in the intro. Daniel was actually in 2 car wrecks before walking off, and his disappearance was solved within the last 2 months when someone, after several years, decided to refurbish a long-time abandoned bathroom, like an outhouse, in a backyard. Daniel was dead in it. No reason to think foul play. However, I'm not sure any injuries from the wrecks are what killed Daniel either. I bring this up not because I want you to all believe Jason walked off to go for help, or he was injured, or whatever else. I mention Daniel's case because it shows how unpredictable these types of disappearances can be. What are the odds that Daniel would just happen to find a building on someone's property that hadn't been used in years, in which to hide or sleep, whether he was aware of what he was doing or not? That has to be even less likely than Daniel or Jason or anybody else getting picked up after a wreck by someone with bad intentions. The counter-argument to thinking that is what happened with Jason, that he ended up in a spot like an abandoned building nearby, is that Kent believes all private property within a reasonable distance, remember that term, of the car wreck has been searched, including ponds and lakes and sheds and barns. Whereas that could not be said about Daniel's disappearance because he disappeared in the middle of a large city. The problem? There's no solid definition of reasonable distance for searches connected to disappearances like Jason's and Daniel's. 1 mile radius, 2 mile radius, 10 miles, nobody knows. And for people like myself, when you double the radius of a circular search area, the entire area quadruples in size. Really, it all just becomes unmanageable, no matter how many drones and dogs and ATVs and humans are involved. And this completely ignores the possibility that Jason really did run into a person or group who picked him up and caused his disappearance that night. So all the rational, logical searching could really all be done for naught. Still, the search isn't over. If you'd like to read and hear more about what I have to say regarding Jason's disappearance, please sign up at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.